On the first day, he killed someone, not out of anger, not out of hate, but because something deep inside him whispered that if he didn't, he wouldn't survive the night. It didn't make sense, and he knew it didn't make sense. But fear doesn't need logic. It only needs a possibility, and that possibility was enough to break him. The world had already fallen apart by then, not with explosions or chaos, but with a quiet, suffocating emptiness that spread faster than any virus. Streets were abandoned, doors left open, cars frozen in the middle of roads like their drivers had simply vanished. At first he believed it was temporary, that people would come back, that there was an explanation. But days passed, and the silence only grew heavier. Then came the feeling. Not a voice exactly, not something he could point to, but something undeniable. Something that pressed against his mind and repeated the same idea over and over again. If you don't kill, you die. He resisted it at first, of course he did. Anyone would. He tried to ignore it, tried to survive on his own terms. But that night, he saw someone collapse right in front of him. A man who had been perfectly fine just hours before. No wounds, no warning, just gone. And that was when fear turned into belief. The next day, when he found someone wandering alone, he hesitated, his hands shaking, his heart racing, telling himself this was madness, that he was about to do something irreversible. But the thought came back stronger, louder. If you don't, you're next. So he did it, and he waited. Minutes passed, then hours, then night came, and he was still alive. That was all it took. After that, it became easier. Not at first, not immediately, but enough. He stopped questioning the rule and started following it. Every day became a countdown. Every sunrise a reminder that someone had to die before it ended. He avoided looking at their faces, avoided thinking about who they were before the world collapsed, because thinking made it harder, and he couldn't afford to hesitate anymore. Survival didn't leave room for morality. At least, that's what he told himself. Days turned into weeks, and something inside him began to change. The fear was still there, but it was quieter now, replaced by something colder, something more efficient. He started planning, choosing targets carefully, convincing himself that he was doing what anyone else would do if they understood the truth. Sometimes he wondered if others had figured it out too, if somewhere out there people were doing the same thing, killing to survive. But he never stayed in one place long enough to find out. Still, there were moments when doubt slipped in, small cracks in the certainty he had built. One day, he didn't kill anyone until the very last moment. And nothing happened. He stayed alive. He told himself it was luck, that maybe the day hadn't ended yet, that the rule still applied, just not in the way he understood it. Another time, he thought he saw someone watching him, someone who could have stopped him, but didn't. And that made him wonder if they knew something he didn't. But doubt was dangerous. Doubt meant hesitation, and hesitation could mean death. So he buried it, just like he buried everything else. Then one day, everything changed. He met someone. Not running, not hiding, just sitting there calmly as if the world hadn't ended at all. It didn't make sense, and that alone made him uneasy. He approached carefully, already calculating, already preparing himself for what he might have to do. But before he could act, the man spoke. He said, "You don't have to do this." It was such a simple sentence, but it hit harder than anything he had heard in weeks. He asked what he meant, and the man looked at him with something almost like pity and said, "I've been alive this whole time, and I haven't killed anyone." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. His mind tried to reject it immediately, tried to protect him from what it implied, but the words wouldn't go away. He laughed at first, a hollow, desperate sound, accusing the man of lying, of trying to trick him, because the alternative was too much to accept. But the man didn't argue, didn't defend himself. He just repeated it, calmly, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Something inside him cracked then, something he had been holding together since the first day. He started thinking back, replaying every moment, every proof he thought he had. Every time someone died and he assumed it was because they hadn't killed. Every time he survived and took it as confirmation. And slowly, painfully, he began to see the truth. There had never been a rule. There had never been anything forcing him to kill. Just fear, coincidence, and a mind desperate to find control in a world that no longer made sense. His hands started shaking again, just like they had on the first day. But this time it was different. This time it wasn't fear of dying. It was the realization of what he had become to avoid that fear. All those people, all those lives, taken for something that wasn't even real. He looked at the man in front of him, wanting him to be wrong, needing him to be wrong, but deep down he already knew. The silence returned, heavier than ever, pressing down on him, leaving him alone with the truth he could no longer escape. He had never needed to kill anyone. He just chose to believe that he did. And now, for the first time since it all began, surviving didn't feel like winning anymore. It felt like the worst mistake he could never undo.